Welcome back. I'm Alfred Lamont Weber, and today we have the extraordinary privilege. We haven't had the privilege of having Will Allen with us for several years, I think two or three. He's an extraordinary human being. He was part of the Air Force One um, flight crew for at least under two, perhaps three ad- administrations, as I recall, and is a top notch fashion and industry photographer, and uh, also is one of the most remarkable photographers of extraterrestrial and UFO craft that is now living on the planet, in my humble opinion. I hope.
Thank you.
People can go to his website, which is UFODC, and see that. They can also go to the prior interviews and articles that we've done with Will, which we'll have in the article linking to this interview and show the UFOs on top of Senate office buildings and other and the White House in so-called protected airspace uh, over the Capitol and the White House. So, welcome, Will.
Thank you. Thank you for having me back. And indeed, it has been a few years. And in those years, the information that I was able to compile based on the events that I initially encountered indeed confirmed the fact that the objects that I had as photographic evidence that I presented to you were extraterrestrial spacecraft. And they knew it.
Excellent. So you really have provided forensic
Proof.
evidence as proof.
Proof.
Proof. Now, have you been able to bring any of your proof to any of the hearings that have been occurring in
I'm
Washington,
excluded. I'm
D.C.?
excluded from a lot of things here, and I'm really amazed by that. You know, it seems to be that the television people are more interested in the work than the people who are interested in the information itself. So it's taken another turn in the sense that at least I'm getting the information out there, even though it is, in fact, an entertainment based type format programming that it is used in. But my problems are, you know, when I made that information known again to the news agencies, and we're talking about a close encounter that took place initially July 16, 2002, and July 16, 1952, it took place again, or
Right.
earlier. And that when I presented them the facts that with the information that I was able to obtain from Dr. Edgar Mitchell, from Dr. Buzz Aldrin, from Dr. Neil Armstrong, from Apollo 11 and Apollo 7 and Apollo 14, it showed without a doubt that the objects that I photographed at the U.S. Capitol building July 16, 2002 were imaged in space during the Apollo moon mission programs. So it says that they at least knew from the data that the astronauts accumulated in space that these objects did exist. But what was more impressive with the fact that what I was able to get from NASA and what I was able to capture from my cameras at the U.S. Capitol building was that the sample showed 100% consistency in anomalies. They were indeed spacecraft.
Very good. Very good. Now, there's supposedly a series of meetings or hearings coming up with the U.S. Congress after January 1st in the new year 2015. Will you be able to get that information in there, which is
If they ask me to come, by all means, and you know,
ah,
when what we're looking at here, what makes everything that I'm doing more interesting is that the current administration's opinion on extraterrestrial events and activities is that it does not exist. and they published that information on NBC News.
Right.
Now, using that information, and hold that thought,
Sure.
and using that information and putting my camera on the roof of my home, which is 7 blocks from the White House,
Right.
who would you believe? Would you believe the information coming off of a camera, or would you believe the information from a person sitting at a desk who is absolutely clueless?
Right. Right.
So these people that they have in the administration, they're doing their jobs, and their jobs basically are to cover up and keep that information hidden from the public, and they're doing an excellent job of it.
Well, now, you've also had meetings with the Capitol Police, who are charged with providing security for that area that includes the Capitol, the White House, that the Capitol Mall. What do they say about your information?
Well, it it was acknowledged in the interview that I had with the United States Capitol detectives, and the day that they asked me to come in and show the evidence. And what was mentioned was that it was consistent with reports that were made by officers that were on duty at the time. So we have the evidence from the officers' reports that are consistent with the photographic evidence that I presented at that time during the interview. But what made it more compelling was the evidence from Apollo 11 and the motion picture footage taken by Commander Neil Armstrong, showing the luminous green objects in space that had the fluidic properties that I photographed at the U.S. Capitol building in 2002, except this motion picture sample is taken in 1969. So it indicates that indeed NASA knew, without a doubt, that the objects that I photographed were extraterrestrial spacecraft.
So, do you think that these objects that have appeared on the moon and have appeared over the Capitol and in other venues, perhaps, are they the same objects or are they objects of the same class?
Well, it's an interesting question because in both questions that you ask, that they're essentially the same, because what I'm looking at is a comparative analysis, and I'm taking all the information that I gather, my information I capture from my cameras, information that's captured from the NASA JPL moon mission files, and putting them all together and noticing that the footage from NASA and the footage that I'm capturing are the same.
Right,
Doesn't take rocket scientists to see the data is consistently the same.
right. So, one could say that if there is, I mean, these are just hypothetical thoughts, but there's a scenario where one could speculate that if they're the same objects, then the intelligence behind them may be signaling to the astronauts, hey, we're here, and signaling on the Capitol, hey, we're here. That these are sort of signaling, sort of showing.
Well,
Is that
you know,
is that what you think?
I worked on uncovering aliens in Sedona, and one of the people they interviewed in Sedona was a doctor named Robert Wood, who was an aeronautical engineer.
Hmm.
And that one of the statements that he made was that if there was a consistent number of events in the same airspace constantly, then that would leave one to conclude that there is a very strong possibility of the presence of a base. Now, I'm getting samples from my home, which I set my camera in a fixed position, constantly shooting 90 degrees straight up, with the left of the frame north and the right of the frame being south. And on a nightly basis, I'm getting the exact same events. Everything vectored the same way in terms of the object's overall trajectory. Everything is the same in terms of the overall UFOs themselves, and everything headed towards the White House. So that says to me that either they're going to the White House or there's a base in that vicinity. and in that vicinity is a large area of water where there could be easily a base underwater. I mean, there's a lot of things and a lot of areas in that area that could possibly be an extraterrestrial base or a cloaked mothership. It's without a doubt, it's here.
Right. So when you say cloaked mothership, that would be a large craft over Washington,
Big,
D.C.
big,
That and
yes.
by cloaked, it would mean it would be
Absolutely
in
invisible.
absolutely invisible, but invisible to any weapons that would be aimed at it as well, right?
Well, I made that statement only because now I've got samples which show objects shooting out of space in a certain area of space. And again, I'm pointing everything 90 degrees straight up.
Yeah,
And then I have objects coming into the same region where the objects appear and vanishing. So they appear and
yeah,
disappear in the same regions of space.
yeah,
So if you have constant samples showing the events happening nightly,
yeah.
disappearing and reappearing, what can one conclude? Either it's a Stargate portal
Right.
or a cloaked mothership.
Yeah, yeah. Well, there are other two alternatives. One is, as you said, there is the underwater base.
Well, there's you've got to understand there's got to be two um, sources here.
Yeah,
There's got to be a place where they're coming from and a
coming
place
from
where they're going.
going to. Right. I see. So they would be coming from an adjacent dimension, uh, and then going into, say, a base that would be an
Here,
underwater base.
here somewhere.
Yeah.
Yes.
And there is the Potomac River. There's the Atlantic. There's the bay. All of the different bays there. Correct.
Don't forget the Chesapeake Bay is a meteor crater.
I see.
It's deep, and there are places down there no one's ever been.
Yeah. Yeah. So perhaps the White House then is in complete denial, public denial for what they call security reasons. That is, they don't know. They're just saying we don't know because either they don't know what these craft are, or they've negotiated an agreement with them that they can come and go, but the White House will
There
say
is just
nothing.
too much we do not know,
Yeah,
especially with what transpired in the 40s, the 50s, the 60s, the 70s, the 80s, the 90s. I mean, there's too many things that transpired that are out of the public view. And, they kept a lid on things, but, the lid was kind of loose because look at all the technology we have now, which is obviously spin off of Roswell technology. So I don't know what's going on here. I think possibly if we are going to talk in terms of terminology, that we are indeed Borg from Star Trek. We're assimilating everything.
yeah. But Will, it seems to me like a person like yourself that has the background that you do, having been on Air Force One for two administrations,
Right.
having all of the background where you are probably than more familiar in the public domain as a citizen, a civilian, with the extraterrestrial patterns in this protected airspace than probably anyone else on Earth. That you should be in those hearings, and you should be the one speaking to the U.S. congresspersons in 2015. I mean, you are so versed. If they want to know, well, what's happening, you can give them a situation as to what's happening that will be backed up by active astronauts. Is that not correct?
That is correct, but what's even more compelling is that the data that I've accumulated with the upgraded technology that I have that substantiates all the information from the past. I've got examples of the green object materialize in the airspace above my home 2 months ago, and it was extraordinary. I have it on a 60 frames per second capture, and it showed whatever this object was has the quality and the technology to fold space. That's what it shows.
And this is the same object, as I recall, or tell me if
The
I'm
green
right or wrong.
spheres, the green spheres, the green spheres from the U.S. Capitol building.
Yeah, but also weren't there objects around 2009 and 2010 that were doing horseplay right over the White House? They were kind of
Well,
coming in and
we're
out.
we're getting repeating events. That horseplay took place in 1952, also in
I see.
July. I mean, it's repeating. But what's more interesting is that as it repeats, the level of technology that's on the ground, and the people have changed obviously since the 1950s, that level of technology on the ground now is able to capture these events in high definition and show you without a doubt that there is indeed extraterrestrial activity in our airspace.
Now, it, are you able to go down to the Washington Post and give this to them and say, this is what's happening over the White House?
It's old news.
Oh,
See, that was the problem. I connected the P's and connected the dots and the T's and everything, and did everything correctly, and put a very interesting comparative analysis together. And then I presented it. And the presentation indicated that extraterrestrials landed on the U.S. Capitol building July 16, 2002. Now, that was July 16, 2002. And to the news organizations, that's old news.
right. Uh, Now, uh, what about a lawsuit against the president for making false declarations?
Well, I come from a military family, and I
Yeah,
understand that the job does indeed have certain things associated to it where they have disclaimers.
yeah,
you know they can blow you apart and just disclaim it. Oh, he was just collateral damage.
yeah,
So won't do a thing. I look at what Steve Bassett's doing, and he gets all the signatures for his disclosure program, and the
yeah,
signatures make it to the White House, and he's had two or three of them
yeah,
successfully completed. What happened?
yeah. Now, are you going to be part of Steve Bassett's effort?
Well, I
Is
am
he?
part of it. I, I
Oh,
share
you
I
are.
share my I share my information with Steve constantly.
Oh, good.
But I mean, it was the same problem I had when I initially made the photographic evidence known in 2002. When you start showing things to people that's outside their level of comprehension, what good does that do? I was sending pictures to people that I thought were UFO experts, and they were absolutely clueless because they never had those kinds of encounters. What was even more compelling was the information I got from Kathy Martin, which is the niece of Betty Hill, and the pictures that Betty Hill took were exactly the same as the objects that I photographed at the U.S. Capitol building.
Right, right. So it's clear that we we now have a great deal of data as to what appears as a plausibly is the major civilization doing this. Would Is that a good working kind of theory or not?
I based on my evidence, concluded that there is maybe one or two different types of species technologies in the air because of the consistency of the objects that I'm getting. That's where it became interesting. I'm getting repeating samples. That means at first those people who disputed the evidence in time lapse, the problem was the time lapse itself. In time lapse, the way I programmed it was the camera was taking a picture every second for 8 hours. So I would get 8 hours of video, but it would be missing things, the time in between and before and after certain events. So I rectified that problem and the issues associated with time lapse and the errors people made in assuming what was photographed. Oh, it's a shooting star, a meteor. Okay, let's wind that up just for a second. I was able to replicate all the events that I document it in time lapse over my home here in Washington. So that means I'm using 60 frames per second, full color night vision. And it showed without a doubt the same events that I photographed in Sedona, the same events that I photographed in Area 51, except it showed it 60 frames per second, and it showed it with sounds associated to it, which will, with the sound associated to it, that means that it can't possibly be a meteor or a shooting star, could it? Because then there's a mechanical sound.
Right.
Shooting stars and meteors don't have mechanical sounds associated to them. So those people that erroneously said that the work is, LOL as you look at the comments,
Right.
I'm the one laughing now because it makes them look absolutely stupid. The physical evidence clearly indicated that what's imaged is indeed an extraterrestrial spacecraft.
Right. Right. Good. Well, now that we've covered kind of the both what the ETs are doing around the Washington area and the
We
White
don't
House.
know. We don't know what
Oh,
they're doing. Now
we
we know
don't
what
know.
we covered. What we
Yeah, yeah,
covered is they're here. That
they're
we
here.
covered.
Yeah, yeah.
What they're doing here, we
We,
have no idea.
okay. So, can you bring us up to date? Oh, sorry.
I'm sorry.
Yeah. Can you bring us up to date, or please bring us up to date on, since we last left off with you until now, on what you've been covering. I think the last time we touched base with you was when you did that first major release about the kind of the horseplay over the White House.
Well, it evolved, and again, I have to talk about the technology and what would be required to document a UFO event. And obviously, it wouldn't be the type of technology you would buy in a store like Best Buy or, a commercial place. You would need something a little bit more advanced, a little bit more high tech, so to speak. So I started looking into a theory, and my theories were that these objects that were appearing in my images would be more apparent at higher levels of sensitivity. And I initially moved from film, which was limiting me to 6,000 ISO, to a digital camera in 2008, which had 25,800 ISO, which I was able to document some extraordinary UFOs with that camera. But with that in mind, I started to think, well, I would need more to see the objects that I was imaging with this camera at 20,000 ISO that appeared to be cloaked above luminous objects. That a camera with higher sensitivity would be able to see at least the changes in um, atmospheric conditions, so to speak. When you see an object that's cloaked, you'll see the object itself. You wouldn't see it. You'd see an outline associated to it within whatever you're photographing, so to speak. So at 100,000 ISO, I started noticing objects materialize and dematerialize. 200,000 ISO, they became more apparent. And now at 400,000 ISO, it's without a doubt these objects are sitting there, and we just don't see them.
Right. So you're really documenting uh, what I would call the dimensional ecology. And that is how we live in this ecology of adjacent dimensions, and intelligent civilizations are really coming through all the time.
Well, it's what I'm doing here is I'm playing on devices of human limitations, and our eyes cannot see, obviously can't see a lot of things, but the technology that exists in terms of photographic technology does go beyond the threshold of the human eye. And I go into those thresholds, and in those thresholds are indeed paranormal and extraterrestrial anomalous activities that do indeed exist.
Yeah. So, so what are some of the things that you've been able to document, and where can people access them?
Well, everything I document is on my website,
Oh,
obviously, which
right.
is ufodc.com.
Yeah.
And, I do things interestingly because what I do is I try to make um, folders or files associated to wherever I do my research, and you'll see chapters: Washington D.C., Sedona, Arizona, Shreveport, Louisiana, Indianapolis, Indiana. Wherever I go, you will see chapters associated to those specific sites. I'm going to do this lecture in New Jersey on Saturday, but Friday night I'm going to be scanning New Jersey skies because one of the things I feel necessary, just as in I did the scan of this uh, what is plantation in
Yeah.
Richmond, Virginia. I just
Richmond.
finished. I'm
Yeah.
losing my train of thoughts because I got so
And
much on my plate.
oh, sorry.
But in Richmond, I was with Ken Balos, who's a paranormal investigator there, and in his yard, while he was smoking a cigarette, I said, look up." And as he looked up, this object, which I documented initially in Area 51, and which I'm documenting over my home nightly, appeared over his home and went to warp, flew away, and he witnessed it. So it was interesting that it let me know it was there. So there's a level of telepathic communications associated to the objects and events that I document. They let me know they're there.
Right. Right. So what are some of the what could you talk about some of the major things that you've uh, uncovered all of this
Well,
time?
one of the things that was more compelling than anything, again, I go back to my lecture, which I'm about to give in New Jersey this
Yeah.
Saturday, was that the objects that I encountered in Area 51 that communicated to me telepathically, telling me to leave the desert, and I complied to their telepathic command. Within 1 minute of leaving the desert, my crew was arrested by Area 51 security personnel. So the aliens wanted me out of there to get the data that I got, which showed their craft slithering like snakes in the skies above me. What was even more interesting is when I got back to the hotel, I had this notion I was being followed, so I set my camera up in the back of my hotel room and started the video running. And I said, "Okay, show yourself to me." 5 seconds later, it appeared on video, and I've got that information. But now it gets even more interesting in that what I was able to document in Sedona was the object that followed me in Area 51. It commanded me to set my camera up in the hotel room behind where I was staying. And as I set the camera up 2 minutes later and started the video running, the object materialized frame by frame, materialized, flew into the Sedona airspace, came back 2 hours later, and dematerialized in the same airspace it materialized into, frame by frame. So I got that on time lapse. But again, the problem was the spaces in between the events. Now, I upgraded all of my technology from Area 51 and Sedona to a technology where I'm able to shoot 60 frames, 50 frames, 30 frames per second, full color night vision in absolute darkness. So I now have the entire event of UFOs, if a UFO event would take place, documented in high definition motion picture standards, showing everything that I documented in Area 51 and Sedona now in full live stream video. Without a doubt, what I assumed was happening in the footage that I generated in the past was indeed happening. They are materializing into our airspace.
Right. Now, when we last spoke, you said that when you were photographing in Washington, D.C., at times you would get a signal to go out and photograph.
It's the same. It's still there.
And so is it the
It's
same?
worse now. It's worse now. It's like sometimes I don't listen because I go to sleep because it's not gonna. I'm not gonna let this run me. But Alfred, how do I explain? And I'll show you 2 years of data, and that's 365 days times two. How do I explain 700 photographs of the same thing? Different nights, but the same thing.
And so is the intelligence that is communicating in Washington, D.C., the same intelligence that is communicating in Area 51
They
and in
followed.
Shreveport?
They followed me.
You follow me?
They
And
followed.
what do you think the nature of this intelligence is?
I don't know. I can't say they're hostile because, first of all, as I stated, in Area 51, they warned me about the impending danger of the security personnel arresting my crew, which they did.
Oh,
And when they arrested the crew, they took their evidence, which was their videos that was in their video cameras. All that was gone. But what I documented showed these two objects slithering like snakes with flight dynamics I've never seen any aircraft with any. It wouldn't be a human flying anything like that, first of all, because their brains would be crushed up against their skulls just based on the type of motions that I documented these objects do in flight. So I think that, you know, they communicated to me then and warned me of it. So I think I made friends, and they communicated to me in Sedona, Arizona, and they showed me how they materialized and dematerialized. So I think they're showing me the next level, and now they're showing me the same thing above my home in real time video. I think that's a great thing because I'm showing you that information. What they're doing here is another question. I can't answer that, but I can show you how they come and how they go,
right,
without a doubt.
right. So, so uh, to what venues are you taking all of these discoveries and that you're making?
To those people who will look and listen, and those venues just happen to be NBC Universal, the Weather Channel, Discovery Science, Animal Planet, American Heroes Channel, all the main people who are into science and technology, they're the ones that are looking at it. But the news agencies, they're still kind of, they're standing off by it because in most cases, I think they don't think people are ready for the truth. I think it's the news agencies that's stopping the progress of things, not just the White House, but everybody's got their hands in this, and those people that don't want the flow of information to happen, they've got a lot to lose here. They lose control of everything. They're the ones controlling everything.
So that actually, in the last several years, you've made tremendous strides
Light
at
years.
at getting into the mainstream of being able to reach, say, 50 to 100 million people.
I did indeed do that.
Yeah, yeah. So how do you feel about that?
Well, it's just like another day at the job, technically speaking. I mean, it's like you're a journalist, you understand that it's about the information,
Yeah.
and how people absorb that information is one thing, and I'm presenting the information to the best of my ability, and I do present some extremely well presented materials. But how it's interpreted by those people that see it, that's another thing. It's like that old saying, leading the horse to the water, and you can't make them drink. You can't make them drink no matter what. It doesn't change a thing. The data gets better, but does it reach home? That's the question.
Well, there's that much of a critical mass of humans that are awakened.
Stuck on stupid, you mean? I think that's what the problem is.
Well, no, they are unstuck, right? Or
well,
not?
wait a minute. They get unstuck, but what unstuck them? Star Wars? So everything that they saw in Star Wars is supposed to be a real UFO? Alfred, I'm getting people that are comparing my work to starships from Star Wars. It doesn't make
Oh,
any sense at all.
oh,
It's
I see.
mindless, absolutely mindless, because they have their perceptions of what they think are real. Again, I go back to those LOLs that I was getting on my videos with the samples that I was showing, which clearly showed extraterrestrial spacecraft. But the problems were that it was missing the information before and after the event because in time lapse, I'm shooting 1 frame per second, while with this high definition technology I have now, I'm getting 60 frames per second.
Right.
So the information, it fills in the places, those gaps where there was doubt. And now with the samples that I do have with the sounds associated to them, clearly, without a doubt, those are not meteors or shooting stars.
Yeah, yeah. Well, so what you're saying, what's needed is a perceptual framework to go along with the visual. Is that what you're saying?
Well, what's needed is someone, whoever these people are looking at as a figurehead, to come along the bandwagon and go ahead and say that indeed they're in bed with aliens.
When you say they're in bed with aliens, what does that mean? They're in bed with aliens.
Our technology and this technology we're using right now to communicate this message between you and
Yeah,
I
yeah.
is extraterrestrial technology.
Oh,
So
you mean this is alien technology that was filtered down to us. It was
filtered
trickled
down to
down.
us. Yes,
It was
exactly,
it was
exactly.
trickled
Here we
down to
go.
us.
Here we go. Now we have it. Now think about it. We have this technology. It
Right.
could make some money.
I see. So what the corporate world is doing is they're not giving disclosure. They're just making money by trickling down. Is that it?
Milking the cow.
Milking the cow. So we have to walk around until
With
they
with alien technology, we're walking around with alien technology. But wait a minute, where did it come from?
yeah. So that's all the so that's the retro engineering corporate shuffle that they're doing.
Yeah, we're being manipulated, and and
Manipulated.
and everything is corporate sponsorship.
Oh, that is really so it's nothing. So there isn't much altruistic that's going on in this world
No,
of
you see, the data gets
retro.
better, but do you think things have changed? Absolutely not. And you see the data on the news; they present it now. Does it change things? No, it
So
stays the same.
so this is really about money and dollars and cents and
Control,
merchandising.
control over a money machine.
Wow. Whose fountain is retro engineering and then have it come down to us.
Control. It's absolute control.
Control. So do you think that they're ever going to turn off the petroleum spigot and turn us
The
on to
only
some
the only way that could possibly happen is whatever it is above my home would have to completely decloak and show itself, and that would be the only thing that would wake these people up.
yeah.
They had to land, like that saying, they had to land on the White House or land on the Capitol. Well, they already landed, but who? It's old news.
Yeah.
It's the problem. It's old news. They landed on the Capitol building July 16, 2002. Nobody did a thing about it.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh,
That's pretty intense. That within itself says a lot.
yeah. So are there any political people that are running on a disclosure platform that you've heard of?
None.
None.
None that I know of. Nobody would be. Nobody wants to go forward and say, "Well, it's real," because first of all, people like myself, people like yourself, in reality, we look like crackpots to most people because the things that we're talking about are just not realistic to most. We're not realistic.
Right. Because we are imprisoned inside an information bubble by the mainstream media that's owned by the same industrial complex that is making money off the retro engineering machine that you
All I
just
can think
talked about.
about is, you remember that those the three monkeys.
Right.
The three monkeys.
Yeah.
That's everything in a nutshell.
You have learned a great deal of wisdom and insight.
Well, you know that saying, if we are reflections of our experiences,
Yeah.
oh my God. I mean,
Yeah.
everything I'm experiencing is extraterrestrial. That must mean I'm an alien because, they're showing themselves to me constantly. They let me know that they're there. They let me document events that are absolutely extraordinary. What does that mean? Why did
Yeah.
they pick me for this? And it is interesting. For those years of vomiting, and I vomited nightly for 12, 13 years as a child because the implant that they put in me was my body was trying to reject it.
Oh,
I actually now enjoy having that. I actually enjoy this. It is absolutely enlightening.
amazing. So, are you are, aside from documenting what you document, are you working on an expression of your process, like a movie about yourself or a book or something?
Well, what I did do that was interesting, and what most humans do when they do get advanced technology that just happens to land in front of their laps was I sampled my UFOs that I photographed and videoed over the course of the years and created a color text technology for motion picture special effects and 3D game development. And it's indeed something that George Lucas and Steven Spielberg don't have anything remotely closely related or even comes near to an actual alien sample that could be applied to 3D motion picture special effects. That's
Yeah.
what I'm marketing.
Oh, good. So what are you doing with that, or where's that
Well,
going?
it's on Twisted Believers on NBC Universal, the Weather Channel's Twisted Believers Tornado Alley, which they feature my footage directly and did indeed make a very well presentation based on UFO weather related phenomena, and they did the same thing with Uncovering Aliens on Discovery Science. So they're trying to go forward with a more realistic presentation. You know, a lot of what I did on Uncovering Aliens was removed from that program because they felt that it would be scary for children to see, and it gave it a PG-13 rating. But it nevertheless indicated that there was still indeed a willingness for most of these agencies, which Uncovering Aliens was produced by the BBC, to go forth with at least some level of information which showed the realities of UFO events versus using reenactments like most people do.
So people can go on these programs and actual see, and these are commercial programs, and they actual see actual ET UFO footage, which you've prepared.
Well, yeah, that they tried to present it to the best of their ability. Unfortunately, the BBC's perception of it was a little bit different because um, they completely cut out all the research that I did while filming Uncovering Aliens, and they used the materials that I used prior to doing our filming there. But what was interesting, that's when I was able to document anomalies entering through wormholes or portals, whatever was out there, would show this object materialize into the airspace and dematerialize in the same airspace it appeared in. And I documented that, so I have scientific proof of how these objects enter and exit into our airspace, not just in time lapse, but now in real time. So we have the physical evidence to show without a doubt that extraterrestrial events do indeed take place in our airspace almost nightly, 24/7, 365 days a year.
Now, now, will your lecture be filmed, and will it be available publicly for
I'm
people?
I'm I'm going to try to film it. I have a couple of people that are going to be there that are going to assist me on it. But without a doubt, showing the evidence, connecting the dots, showing using a comparative form of analysis, which means I'll take a picture from one thing and take a picture from another thing and another picture and another picture, put them all together, and show you it's all the same thing. So with with that level of analysis and the way I put it together, showing indeed not just the objects are the same, but showing their trajectories are the same, or showing the way they travel are the same, and the way their luminous qualities are the same, showing that it is indeed all the same, you can conclude based on the evidence yourself that it is real. There's no collusion associated with anything here. It's all based on evidence. A lot of what happens in UFO research is based on an old event. To me, an old event is last night. So I'm not dwelling on the past. I'm showing you evidence from the past, but showing you the present, showing you the same thing happening in the present tense that happened in the past. It's all the same. What does that say?
Right,
It's
right,
all the same. It's all the same.
right,
It
right.
makes you think. It makes you think. And Robert Wood's statement that the frequency of events clearly indicates the presence of an extraterrestrial base, without a doubt, there is something here. If it's not a base, it's a portal or a cloaked mothership. It's one or the other.
Right. Exactly. Exactly.
I'm not making statements. I'm showing you evidence, and I'm just reading in what the evidence says to me. And I would let the person who looks at this evidence form their own conclusion based on what is presented.
Uh, Following the lecture, what are some of the other projects that you have
Every
involved?
night is the same.
Oh, every night.
Every night it's in fact, as soon as I finish this, I'm putting the camera on the roof for the last scan for the evening. So every night is the same. So
Yeah,
I'm doing technically what NASA should be doing, and I'm documenting technically what NASA should be documenting,
yeah.
and presenting it and using extremely advanced technology, a Nikon D4, a Nikon D4S, Avid Media Composer with Boris Effects, BCC, video and noise reduction technology, which I can make a crappy video look like it's high definition, just refining it using noise reduction. It makes presenting the information better because it's a clearer look of the activities that are being captured by my cameras on a nightly basis.
So, as you said, people can go to your to your website to really access the
Absolutely,
different
absolutely.
chapters of
Everything is
portions.
presented. It's presented in a comparative analysis. What I did with this New Jersey lecture was take from all of the chapters that I had everything that was the same. And when you put everything together and you see everything is the same in Area 51, in Sedona, in Shreveport, in Indianapolis, in wherever I go, Richmond, it's all the same. What does that indicate? That indicates without a doubt that that presence is indeed a reality in our airspace, no matter where we go. They're there.
Exactly. Um, do you have anything that we haven't covered that you'd like to bring up or you'd like to mention?
There is just so much, Alfred. It would be impossible. We would have to have nightly discussions for that to possibly happen. I
Right,
mean,
right.
it's just too much. I mean,
Too much. Right.
way too much. And again, it's all not necessarily based on talk here. What I'm
Yeah.
presenting you is physical evidence. That is a
Physical
little bit
evidence.
different than,
Yeah.
I mean, I looked at some of these shows and I'm not talking about them because I think they did a good thing doing
Yeah.
shows like UFO hunters and things like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
The problem was in going out there, they didn't get anything of their own.
Yeah.
And here, no matter where I go, I get it. So
Yeah.
somebody's not doing the job correctly.
It, it, yes. Exactly. What what final thoughts would you like to leave with our viewers, Will?
Well, I think that everyone should be prepared for much bigger things to take place, and they're going to take place relatively soon here. And a lot of things that are misleading, I found most interesting was the reports when they were supposed to have meteor showers, and I would set my cameras up expecting to get meteor showers, and instead I'd get UFOs. Would, would that be a snow job? That would they know something is coming, and what they try to do is mislead you to think that something indeed is going to happen? That would be a meteor. I've never seen meteors change directions
Right. Right.
multiple times.
Multiple
And
times.
Alfred, I'm talking about the green object from the U.S. Capitol building. I have it on two separate videos, changing directions, doing things that are absolutely extraordinary, and at various altitudes. And I have it. So I have that footage. Those people who doubted the 2002 photographic evidence, I'm laughing at them.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, good. We really want to thank you for taking time out to
I
meet.
almost forgot.
Oh well, I'm glad that I
Salt.
emailed you today and called, and so uh, we we really want to wish you well in your mission, and you're just doing great.
And I just wanted to warn you, don't go to Russia, Alfred. That cosmonaut's going to eat you alive.
Oh,
Oh, yes. She liked you.
oh, right.
Oh, thanks for having me.
Good enough.
Good night.
Right. Good night. Thank you.